This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I am your host, Tim Flattery, and we are all existing in a sports-starved world. There are no sports going on right now, and I guess one of the silver linings in all of this is it has allowed the sports world to get really creative. You know, if you watch social media right now, you see fathers and sons or mothers and daughters in the backyard. They're doing trick shot basketball. They're throwing a baseball through a hoop. You know, they're playing the thing in the thing game. They're recording it. They're posting it on social media. That type of stuff is fun. And what we've also seen is ESPN The Ocho, which of course was made famous by the dodgeball movie, The True Underdog Story. ESPN The Ocho played a prominent role during that movie, and ESPN, to their credit, has brought back The Ocho on a couple of different occasions to play really obscure sports during this time. And so on that channel, we've seen sports like cherry pit spitting, we've seen chess boxing, lawnmower racing, just all types of crazy sports. But maybe the one that has captured the nation and maybe the world's attention the most has been marble racing. And if you guys have watched any of the Ocho, or if you've been on social media or just been paying attention to sports over the last week, you know exactly what I'm talking about with marble racing. And it literally is marbles, exactly what you're picturing in your head, either running down a sand hill or running down a course like a Hot Wheels type of track, and they bet on the winners and they see who wins. And the thing that has made Jelle's marble runs different is the way that they're doing it on this YouTube channel, which is called Jelle's Marble Runs, and Jelle is spelled actually Jelle. Jelle's Marble Runs on YouTube is what really brings it to life. Is there's this announcer named Greg Woods that is doing it very seriously. He's announcing these marble races as if he's announcing the Kentucky Derby, but he's got a really great like Mike Rowe quality about him. He's understated, he's a little sarcastic, and he's so good. He is like the voice of marble racing. And because of the kind of hilarity of the sport and the obscurity of this sport, add that into Greg Woods, his voice, and taking the sport so seriously, plus the production value of this all, and you've got yourself kind of this overnight sensation that is marble racing. And when I talk about the production, you guys have got to check this out on YouTube, because you check out these marble races and it is almost like you're watching the Olympics on NBC. And I'm not kidding. They have the graphics. They have Greg Woods, the announcer. They have these stadiums built out of Legos. They have It's really incredible. They have multiple cameras. They have instant replays. They have fake fan sections, fan reactions, the whole deal. All of it tied together makes for a really fun YouTube viewing experience. And so today's episode is about marble racing. But we actually had Greg Woods, the announcer, the voice of marble racing, on the podcast to talk about not only his experience with marble racing, but the sport in general. So last Tuesday, so about a week ago, I got a text at, about 6 a.m. from a buddy of mine that says, hey, you have to get this marble racing announcer on the podcast because he lives in Fort Dodge. And as you guys well know, I'm from Fort Dodge. Everybody that helps out on this podcast were originally from Fort Dodge. And so I thought it was just the craziest thing that Greg Woods, the voice of marble racing, actually lived in Fort Dodge, because Jelle's Marble Runs is created by two brothers from the Netherlands. So what's this guy doing in Fort Dodge announcing marble racing? And so we got in touch with Greg. He does, in fact, currently live in Fort Dodge. We thought it was a really fun tie-in to have here on the Moonlight Graham Show. And he delivers a great interview. He's passionate about this stuff. He's passionate about marbles. He's passionate about racing. And it's a really fun conversation. And I'm so excited that we're able to bring, this story to the Moonlight Graham world, especially during this time. I think it's a perfect episode while we are all locked up in quarantine. I think you guys are really going to love this episode. And as always, folks, make sure to subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show wherever you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So here it is, this week's episode with the voice of marble racing, Greg Woods. This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com. You know, thanks for coming on the Moonlight Graham Show. And I think the first question I have for you is, you know, what has these last few weeks been like for you? Because all of a sudden, marble racing has gone from something that no one has ever heard of to being on ESPN and CNN and Sports Illustrated and you name it. Marble racing and Greg Woods have all of a sudden had the national spotlight, you know, shown on you guys. So what's the last few weeks been like?
It's been equal parts whirlwind and disbelief at seeing how everything came together for this. You know, it's not the situation that we wished we could have been in, but the fact that we are, as a marble racing, you know, community or producer or whatever you want to call us, the fact that we are able to step in and provide a little bit of joy during this time, it works out fairly well. But like you said, seeing the spread of this is just surreal. I mean, all these legitimate news outlets and celebrities and, you know, places that are pulling this and showing it to their fans, whether it's NBC or whether it's, you know, just yesterday, Joe Buck deciding to commentate on a marble video. I mean, what on earth?
Yeah. How did you get introduced to marble racing in the first place?
You know, there really wasn't an introduction per se. I kind of stumbled across it. It was back in the summer of 2016. I saw one of Jelle's videos on Reddit that was posted. And it was I think it was like a 500-foot, 750-foot marble race, if I remember right. And back then he was only single camera following these marbles down a hill. And that's about it. You know, natural sounds, maybe a little bit of music in the background. But one thing that caught me was I noticed that he gave some of these marbles names and showed almost like a starting lineup at the beginning. And in my brain, that kind of connected as, oh, this would be kind of fun if you actually called it like it was a motor race. You know, if you called it like a proper F1 Grand Prix or something. So I paused the video. I stared at the screen for a while to kind of get the general colors and names of the marbles down. And then I got a cheap mic out for my computer, and I decided to record it just as a spoof. So I posted that, and within a very short amount of time, that in and of itself kind of started to go viral, and it ended up making its way to Jelle, who then reached out to me from the Netherlands and said, would you want to do the commentary for all of our videos moving forward?
So how big at this point, when you do this spoof of a video, how big is marble racing and Jelle? And Jelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it two brothers over in the Netherlands? Are those two guys doing most of the work, setting up the tracks and the marbles and all this stuff?
Yeah, so Jelle and Dion are the two brothers, the Bakkers over in the Netherlands. And they still do a huge chunk of the brainstorming and the construction and the filming and all the studio stuff. They're the ones who go out to the sand hill and with some volunteers sometimes will carve these tracks into it if it's, you know, the Sand Marble Rally, for instance.
Of course.
At the time that I did this, I had never heard of this. So honestly, I don't even remember looking to see how big this was. I just thought it was so weird. He had been making these videos for a little while. You know, he's always been very intrigued with marbles and with the sound that they make and the motions and everything. But this was a departure from that. You know, prior it had been marble machines or no narration or commentary, marbles rolling down a hill or bumping into stuff and making noises. But I think this opened up a totally new slice of the marble niche, if you will. And then it started to quickly take off from there. I mean, we over the next couple of years, we went viral, I will say, a couple of times, but nothing like this. And he ended up amassing, a few 100,000 subscribers before he accidentally deleted his YouTube channel 2 years ago. So that was a hard reset back to zero. He was going through and he saw that he had a Google Plus account and he thought, well, I don't need that. So he deleted it without knowing that was linked to his YouTube channel.
Oh, wow.
So we ended up appealing to YouTube. Hank Green of YouTube is a big fan of ours. His brother John Green, the author of The Fault in Our Stars, he's a big fan. So they tried to do what they could, but we couldn't get the video back, so we had to start from scratch.
Wow. So you originally do that video. These guys ask you to start commentating on all of their races. And how big was the sport at that time? And did you say yes right away? Or did you think, do I really want to be taking all this time to be doing marble race commentary?
I figured, why not? It was so random. It was so bizarre.
And these guys are from the Netherlands. You've never met these guys, right?
I've never met them in person, no. But I thought, you know what? These videos are fairly short. I do it in one go through, so it only takes me a few minutes. So let's say, yes, why not? And at that time, I didn't know what it would end up evolving into with all of the Marble League stuff, which we used to call the Marble Olympics, and certainly now into Marbula One and everything else that we're doing.
Are you a race fan? Is that why this appeals to you? Why marble racing? I've never been into racing much, so this never came onto my radar, but obviously you must have been running around in those circles on the internet a little bit to be able to stumble across it on Reddit. So has racing always been in your blood?
I don't know about always, but from when I was fairly young, that was when my father first introduced me to Formula One, and that's what really hooked me on everything. I'd watched some IndyCar races, and I loved them. I'd watched a little bit of NASCAR, but I'd never seen a thing like Formula One. It was the first race that he ever had me watch was actually the Monaco Grand Prix. So, these futuristic multi-million-dollar cars shooting through the streets of Monte Carlo at 180 miles an hour just blew me away. So I very quickly immersed myself in it, and I learned all that I could, because here in the U.S. it's not very big, even though it's probably the third most popular sport in the entire world behind soccer and cricket. So when I got into this, I very quickly tried to learn everything that I could, and then I saw that there was a contest for writing about F1 if you were a student. So I went on my hometown radio station back in Newton, and I wrote about Formula One in the high school newspaper, and eventually I ended up winning this award, which was called the Chris Economaki Junior Journalism Award, and that's what kind of got me started down the freelance motorsport journalism pathway.
So is that what you've been doing on the side then, is freelance F1 writing?
Not entirely. I've got a very odd, circuitous background with all of that, but that's always been a hobby. It's been, Formula One has always been my favorite. But I was the IndyCar correspondent for a European website, GP Update, which used to exist for a long time and was actually bought by motorsport.com a couple years ago. I headed the IndyCar coverage for them remotely for a good 2 or 3 years. In the meantime, I've picked up just kind of random jobs. I covered American Le Mans Series back when it existed up at Road America up in Wisconsin, and then have kind of traveled around to do little things here and there, mostly as a fan, but then I'd write about them. No, my main job was for a bulk of this time was just being a student. I was going through schooling, and then I was going through grad school and med school, and then took this job in Fort Dodge with the Alzheimer's Association, and I've been doing that ever since. So this is all of the radio stuff and all of the sports stuff has always been kind of on the side. Really?
So what about commentating? You've mentioned writing, but you've got a great commentator's voice. Were you ever coached in how to call a race, or did you watch, F1 races or NASCAR races or horse races to learn how to call these?
I think there are a couple of different ways that has contributed over time. So when I was in high school, I ended up doing speech competition, and one of the events that you could do, in addition to the other one that I did, which was spontaneous speaking, was radio news. So they would give you a big packet of random fake news stories, and then you would have to edit them down into a little 5-minute news program and then go in the other room and give it to the judges. So I enjoyed that, and I used hometown radio station as, kind of, hey, tell me how I'm doing here. What would you recommend I do for this newscast? So between that and then the Chris Economaki Award, they decided to hire me on just kind of part-time or in the summers when I was in high school. But that wasn't really for sports. The sports stuff didn't really begin until I was in college, and I ended up being the sports director for the Drake radio station, the student station. And we got to do men's and women's basketball, and we got to do the telecast of the Drake relays each year, which I loved. We did kind of a mixture of everything in between. So I did that for several years. And then over the next few, I was the pre- and post-race reporter for the local radio station at the Iowa Speedway in Newton, where IndyCar and NASCAR and other series come, 3 times a year, let's say.
Right.
But really, that was about it. So after college, it was mostly just for the radio sports stuff, mostly just the Iowa Speedway coverage every once in a while, until I came up here to Fort Dodge when I took over St. Edmund High School basketball and football.
Oh, I didn't know you were doing the Gales.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, man, you're the voice of the Gales.
A few years now. It's been fun. I've really enjoyed that. Calling my first football game in, well, it would have been 5 or 6 years when I started back in fall of 2016 with them.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun.
So let's get back to marble racing. And if people haven't seen this, you really got to see it, because it's remarkable how addicting it is. Once you like a lot of things on YouTube, once you watch one of them, you find yourself going down a rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you watch 10 of them in a row. Like I watched the 5-meter sprints ones that you had the other day, where it was just a straight track for 5 meters. And I found myself watching those for probably a half an hour. So with the marble racing, like these guys are building like Lego stadiums, and they have like elevators for 10-lap races and things. When you first got involved, was it this sophisticated, or has it continued to grow?
Oh, not even close. But back then it was really just one camera, somebody walking, down the hill alongside the marbles as they went. So it was shaky. It wasn't super high definition. It very quickly became evident as it started to grow that Jelle was going to have to upgrade the equipment and keep up with that. But then over time, we also said, well, I think we need to change the production value a little bit too, because as this was growing, we realized that there was kind of a responsibility to continue to improve it, whether it's with timing and scoring, or whether it's with on-screen scoring pylons of who's where. When the Marble League started, that was kind of a whole venture into the unknown, and that was where they started to create, like you said, the stadium and all of the different tracks and the apparati and stuff that you actually have to compete on. They had to turn what are human events into marble events. So that's trial and error, and that's figuring out, can we do that first off? And if we can, how do we film it? And how do we make it the same for all of them? So even the first Marble League, when we were still calling it the Marble Olympics, it looked a lot different than what it does now in terms of the polish and the details. And if you look carefully on the screen, I mean, you'll see little cameras with marbles behind them. You'll see, a marble me in the commentary box. You'll see striped marbles for the referees. And, all of these little things, it just becomes so immersive. And that comes with time and that attention to detail into what it is now, where, for Marbula 1, for instance, what you were talking about with the multi-lap racing, before the video even reaches me, we are – obviously, they have to construct the track, they have to test it, they have to film it, they have to edit it, but then they're getting crowd noises, they're getting team chants, they're doing split times between the sectors so that they can update timing and scoring. So there's a lot that goes on now behind the scenes before it even reaches me.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So how many videos per week are they sending to you?
It depends on the season. So Sand Marble Rally season, which is the first video that we were talking about where it all began, that's outdoors, so it depends on weather, because the sand conditions have to be just right. So sometimes, that can be spread out over a few months. It's usually a 10 or 12 race season. Then you get into the Marble League, where it is a 2-week marathon, where we're putting out a new video every 3 or 4 days, and there are 15 events in there, roughly. And it spreads out usually more than 2 weeks as we air it at least, but in the filming, it's kind of condensed down and a lot of trial and error there. And now with Marbula One, that is an 8-race season, but then you also, in addition to the race days on Sunday, just like in F1 or Indy or anything, you've got qualifying on Saturday. So really that's 16 videos for the Marbula One season. And then in between, Jelle often does either theme races or just random ones, or there are B leagues. So it ends up being quite a few over the course of a year.
Now, are there marbles that have been around for, the last 5 years, or is it all new marbles every season?
Oh, no. So there are big fan bases behind some of these marbles that have been around a while and that have done really well in some of these videos. So the one that went viral, for instance, a week ago, that was a 500-foot race, I think from 2 or 3 years ago, where a marble called Comet ended up winning.
Yeah.
And that one, Comet hasn't done the greatest in terms of championships and stuff since then, but certainly a lot of the marbles that were in that were still in the videos up until, last year, up until the most recent season. He's added some over time, but the lore builds on them. And then sometimes he'll also do relegation if they haven't been doing well and they get kicked down to the B League or something. But you've got, these legends of sorts that compete, whether it's Red Number 3, who's one of the first fan favorites and is a multiple champion. Ghost Plasma has been a winner. Big Pearl is a fan favorite. At least by name, one of the favorites is Marbly McMarbleface. I
can see why that's
what
popular.
you will.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Pollo Loco. There's all kinds of these crazy names, and Jelle comes up with some of them himself, but he opens it up to the fans and will say, "What do you want to call this marble? What do you want to call this team?" So sometimes people are sending him marbles, and then he puts them into the videos, but a vast majority are marbles that he owns and that the fans have just kind of adopted and built the backstories behind.
Now, Is he trying to source fast marbles? Like, is there a world out there that someone is building, speed? I don't know, marbles built for speed, built for racing.
Sending scouts out to the AAA leagues and
Yeah,
stuff.
like-
It's a little bit different now. I'm not really sure how he does it, but I know that the marbles for the Sand Marble Rally are a slightly different diameter than for the Marble League and Marbula One, for instance. But I can't even fathom how many marbles that he has over the course of everything, because he did recently open a marble museum over in the Netherlands, which has always been a dream of his. So he has done marble machines before where it's literally 10,000 marbles at a time rolling down and making noises and creating this cacophony of sound as they come down the course. So he's got a lot of them. And I don't necessarily know what the scrutineering process is, if you will, but thus far, none of the marbles have failed it, so they're all allowed to race, and we haven't seen any disqualifications because of any weird modifications or greasing or anything like that.
And I've watched a handful of these now, and I've noticed like there's instant replays, and it really feels like, there's graphics going on and stats going across the screen, just like a NASCAR race would have. The production's incredible. So are people betting on this? Is this like, especially now, like people are looking to bet on anything. Can I bet on marble races right now?
I'm sure you can somewhere. We did actually team up with a European betting agency a while back. We have talked about doing it elsewhere. We have, I think, some places that are doing betting, but I've heard that only as a rumor. I'm not sure. I don't know what the process is for going through that for a brand new kind of weird sport like this. If it's any different than any other sport, I guess, on the back end. But I imagine someplace you can.
Now, you keep saying we. Are you a part owner on this? Do you have an ownership interest in this?
Not really. It by that definition, no. I've been with it for so long, and I am a part of this whole. I'm a cog in the whole train of this process, and it started pretty much with the two brothers and me as we went forward. But now we do have a committee along with us. We have an international committee, basically, of about a dozen people. And like I said, some of them, for instance, help out with the music. Some of them do, the cheering or the sound effects. Some of them, there was actually an a cappella choir from a university here in the U.S. that did the team chants that you hear in Marbula One right now. So all of these actual, individual team chants were recorded by a group that were helping do. They were called Time Check. So we've got, some that help out with graphics, and we've got some that are more on the technical side of things with timing and scoring or things like that. So it is definitely a team effort, and I play a part in that. So I guess it's kind of natural for me to say we over the course of all of it, because we've really taken ownership of it, and that goes with the fans too.
What's next for marble racing? Like, do you think this is just going to be a flash in the pan, or do you think that this is going to be something that is going to continue to grow once more people have been aware of it?
Really, it's tough to tell at this point, because we're in such extraordinary circumstances right now. With the vacuum in sports, the way that these teams, the way that all of these leagues, I should say, are currently on hiatus, fans are needing something to fill that gap. And the fact that we were right in the middle of the Marbula One season, the fact that it is a sport that you really can only watch from home. I mean, there's no way to go watch it in person unless you want to go over to the Netherlands sometimes and help him carve out one of these hills. But, it just by its nature means that it's very well suited for the less than ideal circumstances that we're in. But where does it go from here? I think it's really tough to say. I've been astounded where it's grown already. I would never have guessed that we would have been in Time Magazine or, Sports Illustrated or, anything like that. In terms of immediate future, I think with the IOC confirming that the Olympics are postponed now, this year's Marble League could be the only Olympic-style competition that's going on during this time. So It's definitely, we feel like there's a big responsibility to pick up the slack.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself cheering for any one particular marble, or do you have to stay objective as the announcer?
I cheer for situations, I will say. As a commentator, I can't play favorites or anything.
Of course.
But what I do love are the stories that come out of it, whether it's an underdog story or a big comeback or a dominating performance that's record-breaking or whatever it is. That's fun for me to call, and that's good for the sport too. And we do have controversy sometimes, whether it's the fight in the stands or a streaker going down the course or starting gate failure, or the famous fidget spinner injury. All of these things build onto the lore and build onto the background, and the fans take that and they run with it, and then I can run with what the fans did, and then they do the same to me. So it ends up being this back and forth. So anytime you do get those exciting things, or the host curse is finally broken in Marbula One, I love that. That is exciting. It's not necessarily rooting for it to happen, but I love when it does.
How often are you getting emails or messages for marble fans that are literally freaked out or mad at you over like cursing their favorite marble?
As both a human commentator and a marble commentator, I'm always wary of the commentator's curse.
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
True. I'm always very cognizant
all
of
the
that.
time when the announcer says this guy shoots 95% from the free throw line and then he miss. So do you get a lot of that in the marble world?
Thankfully, no. Because I often record these in one go, there are mistakes that go out sometimes. I'll maybe miss something or I'll misidentify something, and that comes with a part of it. But I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of that for the genuineness of the reaction. And sometimes people say, "Oh, I think he meant to say this," and that's totally fine. That's fair. But for the most part, this is a very good-natured group. They're very supportive. They're understanding. I saw somebody online the other day when they saw that the Ocho was going to be replaying us. They said, "Oh, I came on Twitter to trash talk the other team, but then I realized that this was such a positive community. I wish you all the best in your pursuit for second place behind us." So it's stuff like that I think really encapsulates what this is. That even though we do allow the fans to put themselves into it or their own storylines into it, it doesn't veer into the negative. And even with all of the stuff going on right now with COVID-19 and with the virus, we have purposely said, let's try to be separate from all of that. Let's create an escape for people that truly is an escape. So we're not going to be, making references to that or making light of it or anything. And I think that just helps with the immersion of it all.
What's been the craziest outreach that you've had so far, during this COVID-19, during this virus? I know you've had, ESPN and Sports Illustrated and some of these shout outs on social media. Which one has hit home the most for you? That's a really tough one because it's just shown up so many places.
when it first started to go viral, and seeing the fact that that one video in a few days amassed something like 35 million views, that just kind of blew me away. But then to start to see some of these celebrities talking about it, I thought, what? That's pretty interesting. And then to see actual journalists and actual race car drivers and things, that work in Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR start talking about all of this stuff, that was astounding. Actually liked one of my tweets. He had watched it once, so I thought that was really amazing.
Who was that again? Sorry, you cut out there real quick.
No. So his name is Bob Varsha, and he has been the voice of open wheel racing, F1 especially here in the U.S. for 30 years, up until a few years ago, when some of the rights changed for TV packages. But he had commentated just about everything with David Hobbs and Derek Daly and Steve Matchett and all of these pretty legendary names in that field. And I've always loved his cadence and his import that he puts on things, and the way that he's able to explain it without becoming shouty or going off the rails. So he actually liked one of my tweets. I thought that was pretty cool. But I'm always amazed where it pops up and in what parts of the world it pops up in as well.
That's so cool. Well, Greg, it's been fun to catch up. I know you're a busy man right now, but I'm really glad that we were able to connect here for the Moonlight Graham Show. Especially knowing that you're doing this out of your apartment in Fort Dodge. I think that's so cool.
It is certainly one of the more random things that I have ever done, and I'm glad that we're able to share some happiness with it.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.